Thank you all for joining me today. I've got Tyra with me. Tyra, is Rachel joining us? Do you know?
Yes, she is. She's coming.
Okay, and here comes Rachel. Hi, Rachel. Thanks for coming in.
Hi.
So since this is a webinar, only the panelists are seen and heard from. And as we're going through the session, if you'll put your questions either in the chat or in the Q&A, then we will have time at the end to come back and answer questions. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So just in terms of an overview of this session, there are three kind of big topics that I'm using to frame our conversation. One is meeting minimum wage expectations, and the information in this particular part of this session has not changed from the last year or so. So for those of you that are returning for this session, you'll hear this information and it'll be the same, and that's great if you remember it. That helps us to know we're all doing it right. Some of you, this is your first time with us, so it'll be interesting information, at least for many of you. Then we're going to talk about the GA paperwork, and this is where some new information is coming in. And so at that point, Rachel and Tyra from HR are going to share with you some of that information. And then I have what I've called just odds and ends. I just have a couple of pieces of information that I want to share. So to get started, looking at minimum wage expectations, I want to talk very quickly about GA types, start and end dates, and then minimum amounts, because all of that is related to that. So in terms of graduate assistant types, we actually have 4 types of graduate assistants on our campus. We have graduate teaching assistants. These are our GTAs. They are sometimes the instructor of record. They don't have to be, though. They could be someone who's actually assisting in a class, or maybe they're tutors or something. Whatever they're doing is an instructional related role. Those are graduate teaching assistants. We have graduate research assistants. Often our graduate research assistants are funded by grants, but these are individuals that are engaged in research in some very meaningful way for their assistantship. We have the graduate assistants that work for housing, so they're called graduate assistants residential. And then we also have what we call graduate administrative assistants. And so these are individuals that are probably working within an office and doing something that connects to their program. They shouldn't, like, graduate assistants in general should not be like student workers who are making copies and answering phone calls and things like that. Like, the work that they do should be related to their program in a very meaningful way. And then at least 60% of their time should be on those job responsibilities. So it's not wrong if you, in a pinch, you need to ask a graduate assistant, hey, can you cover the phones for us? That's not wrong. But if that's all they're doing, then we have a problem. So you want to make sure that whatever they're doing, whether it's teaching, research, administrative type work, that's making up the majority of their assignment, which we define as 60%. But knowing the GA type is important in terms of like pay and things. So I want to talk for a minute about why it's important when you are deciding what type of assistantship is going to be assigned to a person, why that matters. So just comparing them side by side, you'll notice that on one side, the graduate administrative assistants are over here kind of by themselves. And then we've got GTAs, GRAs, and the residential GAs are over here. The reason they're lumped that way is that in the Fair Labor Standards Act, they specifically talk about GTAs, GRAs, and the housing GAs as being exempt, whereas they don't mention the GAAs at all, the administrative graduate assistants. And so we have interpreted that to mean that the GAAs are non-exempt. Now, if you're like me, just a few years ago, I would say, that doesn't tell me anything, Dr. Barlow. What in the world does it mean for one group to be exempt and the other one's not exempt? And basically what that boils down to is, for the administrative assistants, we have to demonstrate that we are meeting minimum wage. So by being non-exempt, they are held to being paid at least minimum wage. Whereas the other categories, we don't. Those are thought of as more as like salaried workers. And in terms of meeting minimum wage, that means that those individuals have to have their hours worked tracked, hours worked in a week, per week, I don't know what that means, like WKD. Anyway, all the hours that they work have to be tracked. And those records are kept in your department. So if you have a GAA and they're working, say, 20 hours a week, then you should be maintaining a log that shows the days and the times that they're working to document those hours worked. Oh, that's what WKD stands for, worked. Y'all, it's a Tuesday. Okay, but over here on the other side with GTAs, GRAs, and GARs, you don't have to track that. So they have their expectations of work to be completed, but we're not tracking the hours. Now, don't go crazy, right? Because a full assistantship is considered 20 hours a week. And so we want to keep it in that realm that whatever they're doing is 20 hours or it's the equivalent of 20 hours. And sometimes that's hard to judge if it's a teaching assignment or housing where they're sort of on call all the time, but maybe more actively at other times. So, you know, we have to be reasonable with that, but we definitely are tracking the hours with our GAAs. And when Arkansas decided to raise the minimum wage, which they did over a 2 or 3 year time span to get to where we are now with an $11 minimum wage, it became necessary for us as a university to put some guidelines out there to make sure that some things were happening so that we would meet that minimum wage. And one of the things we had to do was say, okay, if you are a GAA, we need for your hiring paperwork to be split out so that you have fall dates and spring dates. And what that did for us is it said, okay, during these last 2 weeks of December, you're not working and we're not paying you to work. Because when we were doing that, it was messing up our ability to meet minimum wage. So for GAAs, we're talking about why it's important to know which type of GA you're hiring. If you're hiring GAAs, you have to have separate fall and spring dates. Whereas the other graduate assistant types, you don't. You can have one set of start and end dates, like August to May. You don't have to separate it. What that means, this is a implication of that, and it impacts the students. And we try to make a concerted effort to communicate this to our graduate assistants, is that if you're a GAA, you're not going to get a December 31st check, because that would have been paying for those 2 weeks and you weren't on contract that time. Whereas the other GAs receive a December 31st check. Now, that doesn't mean that we're actually paying the GAAs less, because in reality, both groups are all paid. If they're all making the minimum of $8,600, everybody's getting that same $8,600. The difference is the GAAs get one less check. So that means all their other checks are more than those in the other category. Now, that may be a lot of information that you didn't really want to think about today, but what I'm trying to do is communicate the importance of several things. One is thinking about correctly identifying what type of GA you have. And then two, if they're falling over here in this GAA category, that we have to be very mindful of, like, tracking hours, making sure our start and end dates follow the guidelines that I'm about to share, and acknowledging with students that that means that December 31st paycheck will not be there and they need to plan accordingly. In terms of the start dates for GTAs, GRAs, housing GAs, in general, for the fall semester, they should start either August 1st or August 16th. And then it should, for the full academic year, it would carry through May 15th. And comparatively, for GAAs, we ask August 1st or 16th through December 15th. And then we pick up again January 1st or 16th through May 15th. Now, sometimes I get the question, I want my GA to start on August 10th. Well, how does that work? Well, if they are starting at some time other than the dates I have listed, then like in an August 10th, for example, you'd want to have a start date of August 1st. Like, you don't want them working and then you start them on the 16th. You have to start them on August 1st as their start date, but they don't have to actually start. Like, for whatever reason, the government is fine if you start them on August 1st, but they don't actually work until the 10th. So that they're like being paid for some time that they're not working. Like, we're okay with that, but we're not okay with them starting and not getting paid because their official start date came later. So you can always start earlier if you need to. When it comes to summer, we don't put those guidelines, firm guidelines down, because summer work is just all over the place. So you actually have to decide what your start and end dates are for the work and use those. But do be mindful that the university has this 1st and 16th. Those are the start dates that you have to work with. But if they're starting like June 16th and then ending July 15th, that's fine if that's when the work is done. The important thing that I want to communicate about these start dates is that as a part of starting a new job, there's the I-9 verification that must be completed either before they start or within 3 days of starting. So if you have a student that starts, that you have them starting on August 10th, so I'm gonna go back to that example. If they're gonna show up here on August 10th, but their start date was August 1st, well, they haven't already done the I-9, they've missed their opportunity to do the I-9. I don't know what the ramifications are for that, but it takes some doings to get things fixed. So in that instance, you would want your students to have done the I-9 before they start, before the August 1st start date, or within 3 days of that, which may mean an extra trip to campus before they officially start, or talking with the folks in HR about what they can do to make sure that gets handled, okay? And then in terms of minimum amounts, so based on the start and end dates that we've given you, based on minimum wage, based on all of that, and thinking about this in terms of a full assistantship, which means the 20 hours of work for fall and spring semester, the minimum that we need to be paying is $8,600 for that academic year, which is $4,300 per semester. If you're doing a half assistantship, you would just take that number and half it. Of course, you can always pay more. If your budgeted amount allows you to pay more, then you can certainly pay more. There is a maximum that can be paid, and I'm just going to let that sit there for a minute and come back to that in a little bit. But you definitely have to pay the minimum, but you can pay more than that if you like. And then in terms of summer, we just have to calculate it. So based on the number of weeks you have the person working and the number of hours per week, then we want to multiply that by 11, since that's the minimum wage, or if you're paying 12 or whatever the amount is, to figure out what the amount should be for that summer pay. Phew, that was a lot of information around meeting minimum wage expectations. Again, that information itself has not changed since last year. So if you're a returning person, nothing in that area has changed. It's just bringing it back to your radar to be thinking about these things. And for a new person, again, this stuff is recorded. We'll have it on our YouTube channel so you can watch it and refer to it, but also know that we're a resource for you. Leslie George is our person Leslie joined us in September, and it has been phenomenal to have Leslie on our staff. And she is a great resource, and she can try to answer your questions. And if she doesn't have the answer, she'll talk to the right people and get the answer for you. She won't make it up, which is always a good thing, to not make up answers. Okay, so now we're going to switch gears and talk about GA paperwork for a minute. These submission timelines, this is the same set of timelines we've shown in the past. And the idea here is that in the graduate school, we don't have a lot of staff. And so the ones that we have are working constantly. And so when we look at what's happening at the beginning of, say, fall semester, there's a lot that's going on that falls on Leslie's plate. So the more that we can do of this GA hiring process before, the earlier we can do that, the better off we're going to be. So we set these deadlines. These are not hard deadlines. Like if you miss it by a day, a week, a month, we're still going to process your paperwork. But just know that when things miss the deadlines, then there's a likely chance that it's going to slow things down. Okay. But we've got for summer, April 15th, which is coming up. It's right around the corner. April 15th also, if you already know you've got GAs that you're going to be hiring for the fall, again, go ahead and process that paperwork. Get it on our radar so that you don't have to worry about it. New students, we put July 1st. We recognize that sometimes we hire GA like at the end of July. That's fine. Get the paperwork then. But in all those instances where you can meet these deadlines, here they are. And spring is a November 1st deadline. Oh, and then there's my little bubble to remind me to say one more time, please meet these deadlines. Like it helps all the way around. Okay. So we do have a new hiring process. I'm super excited about this. So in the past year or so, we've been modified. We changed some things. We were using PAF and people admin as a part of part-time and adjunct category, but we have worked with HR. They have been so wonderful to work with us to get it to where we have a unique hiring setting for graduate assistants. So in just a minute, Tyra and Rachel are going to take over and share that with you all. But this is a new hiring process specific for GAs, and it takes effect April 1st. And that's no joke, right? April 1st is April Fool's Day. So I have to be sure and say, no joke, takes effect April 1st, which is Friday. Just to say out loud, a part of this new system is the GA recommendation form will not be required any longer. I think I heard some applause across campus that just then when I said that. So we're all excited to not have to do another piece of paper. And then also scholarship information, when that is a part of the assistantship, will be included in the hiring paperwork. So it won't be a separate thing. It'll all be a part of thing. I think, again, I heard some applause across campus. So people are as excited as we are, and this is really cool. So I'm going to stop at this moment and let HR take over. So I will stop sharing my screen and invite Tyra and Rachel to engage in some conversation with us.
Good morning. We are excited. I'm a process nerd, so I like when processes get streamlined. Dr. Barlow and Leslie have seen that about me. We have changed up some things. For the most part, on your side, when you hear the word change up from HR, you probably freak out and say, oh, they're changing things again. My hope is that this makes it tons easier for you. The main difference is when you, the hiring proposal is different in people admin, and the PAF is going to be different, but how you get to them and what you do is exactly the same. So I will start with the people admin piece. When you go to, let me share my screen. When that's chat. When you go to, normally when you go to a posting, to make your posting like you normally do for a graduate assistant, you will come here to this adjunct part-time grad assistant. You will do that no longer. If you have some out there now that are like that, that's totally fine. Starting April the 1st, you will need to use this one solely. And we'll take grad assistant off of that so it won't confuse you. We haven't changed anything yet till we kind of showed it to you. So don't freak out if any of this is still happening. We'll still process them and get them through, but starting April the 1st, you're going to want to go here. So that's really the main difference for you, is that graduate assistant has its own spot now. It has its own home. Everything is going to flow exactly like you normally do in making your posting, the workflow and all of that. Some of the questions you're no longer have to do the GA recommendation form. So how we have accommodated that is we have included that information on the hiring proposal and the PAF. So what I'm going to show you is how both of them look different and why. Process exactly the same, but you'll notice there's some additional questions on the hiring proposal when you get to the hiring proposal phase. Once you've picked your applicant and you're hiring them, you will come in here and complete your hiring proposal. So instead of kind of walking you through all that, because you'll know how to hire through people admin, we're just going to show you where it's a little different to accommodate the recommendation form. It will still pull over all of the employees' information from their application. You will need to include their UCA email. This is a sandbox, so it's not a real one, and their UCA ID, where that's not something you normally do on new hires because they don't know, but with a GA, they will have already have a UCA ID number and a UCA email. So that is an extra piece that you will need to put on the hiring proposal. These questions should pull over. An additional question is their graduate degree program, and if they have been enrolled in that program, and for them to indicate the courses when they will begin that. These are some additional pieces you don't normally do. Everything else is pretty the same. There are some grant questions. Basically, any question that was on the recommendation form that was not on the hiring proposal, we have put it on there. So you've got your, whether it's funded by a grant, where a place for you to put the grant title, the grant source of funds, those will be listed there for you. Now, this is where it's a little bit different than probably what you have normally seen on hiring proposals if you hire other employees. The appointment dates, you have an actual start and end date. On the hiring proposal, Dr. Barlow mentioned the like your GAAs. Those, when you have to separate those and do a hiring proposal for the August through the December dates, and then your January through May dates, you're going to post that for what you plan to do. So you plan to do an academic year, so from August to May, but they have to have 2 separate PAFs. So you're posting, which Leslie's got this for y'all later, so you can reference back in case you don't remember what I say. You will post your job from August to May, but when you do the hiring proposal, you will need to put the August through December here and then submit a PAF for the January to May. Because if you can keep in mind, the hiring proposal is the equivalent of a PAF. It's the people admin version of a PAF. So if you can get that and remember that, you'll know why there has to be 2 different ones to accommodate those hours that Dr. Barlow was talking about. You will put how many hours per week. These are some different questions. Supervisor, if there's a principal investigator, these are just some additional questions. Information about whether they graduate or not. Here's a little bit more specific, whether this is an appointment or a reappointment. These are all just questions that are specific to GAs that are not on your other hiring proposals. There's still the question on the remote work. Now, here's the biggest piece right here that's brand new to y'all on hiring proposal. This is where the scholarship information will be. Now, people admin, they don't allow us the ability to customize as much as we would like. So where you would normally put, is this have a tuition scholarship? Yes or no? What type of award? It's either an initial award or a reappointment. And then it gives you kind of some help text. If it is a reappointment, you have to attach that GA evaluation. And then it asks how the scholarship would be funded. Is it a departmental? Is it funded by a grant? Is it an athletics? Or does this not even apply to this student? So you'll select something here. Now here's where, just to explain this, normally when you are putting in their scholarship amount, you put in the total amount and then how that breaks down for each term. So we've got, you'll put your total amount either in dollars or by credit hour, up to so many credit hours. You'll do that for your fall term. You'll put your year in and then what that amount is, that award amount, your spring, whatever term that is. And we've put those examples. So you'll just have to list them out there. And then the justification. Now this part down here, you don't have to know, that's for Leslie to keep up with. But this is probably the biggest piece that's different for y'all. The other component of this is, Stephanie, I'll get to your question in just a second. When all of this is coming through, the PAF and the hiring proposal, one of the other things, aside from they have their own spot, is it will immediately go to the grad school. Whereas the grad school was later down in the workflow and kind of got it after it had gone through several different approvals. The grad school is going to get it first right after you. So as soon as you move it forward, grad school gets it. They're going to be able to review all this information. If you've missed any information, they're going to be able to send that back to you for you to correct and kind of stall that there instead of you getting all the way through and then hanging up there. That's another big difference. Doesn't really change anything for you, But that's kind of the workflow on this side that we've done. Let me see, question. The question is, if you hire a GA in the fall for fall only and then decide to extend to the spring, does the spring appointment need to go through people admin or just a PAF? At that point, if the GA has been hired, then you would do a PAF for that spring assignment. Unless you have posted the spring job, say you posted that graduate assistantship for spring and decide to hire the one in the fall, then you would need to continue out that process in people admin. Does that make sense? You kind of started it at a posting, you need to carry it through the hiring proposal, even if it is an existing employee. So will this also go to grants, or is there any additional paperwork there? Post award specialists will review these. They will actually get sent to grants now. The same process will, right now, the way grant GAs have run is budget has gotten all of them and then forward anything to the grant office that needed to go. That will still kind of follow, but the grant accounting will see all of these. Yes, and they'll actually be in the workflow. Budget will just help send it there.
Jenny asked a question. Also, how do we indicate if we want both tuition and fees paid just instead of just tuition?
Dr. Barlow, is that okay? That might be a question for y'all as to how y'all want that indicated on here. These right here, all of these boxes are just text boxes, so you can type anything in there that you need to.
Just like they did on the old form, right? So
Yes.
they would write up to 9 credit hours, tuition and fees. So yeah, those text boxes allow you to put that stuff in there, just like you did when it was a form.
Mm-hmm. We tried to keep everything exactly the same as you're used to completing it and filling it out, except just in one place. So just think of how you normally would have done it on the recommendation form. You're going to do the same thing here. You just get to do it all in one spot now. That's the people admin piece. The next component, while we did this, we decided, because we had these additional questions, and y'all know the PAF has a ton of information on it. GAs also get their own PAF now. Now, the good thing about DocuSign is you don't have to intuitively know which template you need to pick. We will have that designated on our website. Right now, when you do a PAF, can y'all see? Let me see what's sharing.
We see the PAF page.
You see the PAF? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Zoom share is tricky sometimes. So normally now when you go to select a PAF, you get asked questions. Will this need to be approved by the provost? Is there a grant? What this does is this automatically pulls the template that you need to use for the type of employee that you're using it for. We are in the process, and we will have this ready by the 1st. There will be, is this a graduate assistant here? So as long as you say yes to that, it's going to get you the right template. And the difference is, and the reason it's different than the other ones is because of all of the questions. We're asking additional information that we don't normally ask on a PAF to accommodate the recommendation form information. And also to ensure that everything is routed to the grad school. Nobody has to decide to send something to the grad school. We don't have to worry about them getting missed. They are, again, with the PAF, it's going to route directly to the grad school from you all when you start it. So let me show you what the PAF is going to look like. It looks pretty similar to what it has normally. We tried to keep the same structure so it doesn't look super drastically different. Keep the same, what you're used to doing. You'll just see that there are different format of questions. Up here, these are the only 3 options that you have to worry about with a GA. You don't have to worry about retirement or those type of things. You will include their degree program. That's an additional piece. It does say graduate assistant up here. So if you accidentally click on this and you're not hiring a graduate assistant, just get out, let us know and we'll delete that envelope for you. Here's where some of the information is a little bit different that you normally have on the recommendation form. This is a grant PAF, just like you have grant PAFs, other ones, there will be a GA grant. And that is just to ensure that it gets routed to the grant office and get those additional questions. Again, all of those will be asked on our website to get you the right one. So you don't have to worry, am I picking the right one? As long as you just answer the questions, it will, and they're just yes or no. Is a grant paying for this? Yes or no. Is this a provost need approval? Yes or no. It'll all pull exactly like the ones we do now are. It'll just ask the GA piece to it. You're going to go ahead and put all of the normal information. This will be a drop-down box here. Is this they're recommended for an appointment or a reappointment? You'll put their faculty supervisor, their salary, how many hours per week they're working. If they're a 20-hour week, if they're a 10-hour week, this is something that you will put here. Here, with the grant, since it's a grant one, you'll have the option to put the title of the grant and the source of funds. This will be a drop down. One of the things that we will do right here for you on account code is we'll have a drop down of all the GA account codes. You don't have to remember which one's which. You'll be able to just click the one that it is based on the type of GA that it is. So all that's pretty much similar. Here is your tuition information portion that's different. We tried to make it look like the recommendation form just for consistency's sake. We would have done the same thing in people admin. People admin is not as friendly as PDFs are. We can customize. So same thing applies how you would normally type things in, like the question earlier. If we're doing, fees and tuition, you could still put that all here. Up to 9 hours for whatever you would normally put. These will be text boxes for the year and the award amount. The type of award, if it's a reappointment award or if it's an initial award, and then a drop down for their funding, departmental, grant, that sort of thing. And that's really the only difference is because your GA recommendation form pretty much had duplicate information. Majority of that was on the PAF. So now you're not having to enter it into multiple places. You can do it all in one area. And the PAF, just like people admin, the hiring proposal, all will route to the grad school first. That way, immediately if there's something that's missing, something you need. Neither one of these will move forward until they are qualified. What's the word? Eligible.
Eligible, yeah.
Eligible, and Leslie will watch those, and as soon as it meets all the grad school requirements, then it will move forward. I think that will help y'all know where it is in the process a little better. It gives the grad school eyes on it immediately and can kind of thwart any things that need to be corrected on the front end instead of getting it on the back end. Do we go through people admin to rehire GAs after the first year? After they've been gone for a year, I'm assuming is your question, then I would say yes. It matters if they are still hired on in our system or not, is where that comes into place. But if they've been gone for longer than a year, most likely you will go through people admin.
What if they are it's their second year? So you process them and people admin their first year, and now they're coming back for their second year.
As long as you've not termed them, like send a term PAF and they've not been termed in the system as far as the employment ended officially, because they've not been ended stopped as an employee. Maybe their job has stopped, but their employment hasn't. Then a PAF can just be issued at that point, and not have to repost that or anything like that. Basically, if we have to rehire them, like you completely ended their employment and now we got to bring them all back, that's when you have to go through people admin. Student recommended for in section 4. This is going to be appointment or reappointment.
So it's a drop down that they choose.
The drop down, right? Yes, yeah. It'll be a drop down. This will be a drop down. Your working title will be a drop down, whether it's a Teach-Eek research. Now that we've used DocuSign a little bit more, there's a few little tricks that we can do that are a lot easier for y'all. I'm learning as I get in and mess with things that we can kind of make forms a little bit more intuitive and a little bit easier for you, but take a little bit of the work out of that for y'all. I think that's pretty much it. Tyra, is there anything that you can think of?
If you do have questions about a rehire, then just shoot me or Rachel, Kim an email and ask, give us some information, and we will let you know how you need to rehire those if you're unsure. We usually apply that 1 year rule. If they have been off of payroll for 1 year, then they will need to be rehired to people admin. And I know that wouldn't necessarily apply to GAs, but also the 1st and the 16th. Remember, those are the dates that we start them on. So, and I know we went over that. I just wanted to reemphasize it. So, and that's it.
So we do have a couple of questions that I'd like for y'all to respond to before we get away. One is, when you're hiring someone from a grant, do you need to do the job posting, or can you go straight to a hiring proposal?
You will have to go through a job posting.
Okay.
Now, if you know who you're hiring, you can do a private posting just so that they have a link to go in and apply.
And I suspect that's something that y'all would help them with.
Yes.
Like to know how to do that, and that there's
Yes.
probably some steps, documentation somewhere as well.
Yes, those instructions will be out there. And the reason for that is not to create a difficulty for y'all. We have to get that employee onboarded. And so that onboarding has to start. You can't just onboard them. You've got to bring them through a job, technically. So if you know who is going to be on that grant and you don't need to post it publicly, we still can help you set that up and bring them on, but they still got to come through people admin if they're a new employee.
Another question we have is, do y'all do training for new admins? Like, do y'all have routine training around people admin and the hiring process?
Yes. If you can send me an email and let me know what you need. Anybody on here, please let me know what you need, and I will tailor it to suit you, and we'll get together. I like to do groups more than one-on-one, but if it's necessary, I can do one-on-one. So yeah, send me an email. Be glad to.
One of the questions was asking about concurrent. Here is a piece that we are working on that hopefully will be fixed when we roll this out on the 1st. That GAs do need concurrent forms like always. What we're working on is making the concurrent form part of the DocuSign envelope, which means all you have to do is start the PAF and it will route to the employee to fill out the concurrent. So you're not having to get them to fill out the concurrent, waiting for it to get back to you, and then you attach it. We're trying to get them in the workflow as well to make that easier for PAFs all the way around, not just GAs, but full-time staff, part-time, all staff and faculty. We're trying to do the same there. We're kind of working with the workflow on that.
And for GAs who are already, they're hired and they're in the system and everything, but maybe you're paying them something extra. They're doing an extra responsibility over the break or something. They just do another PAF for that extra compensation, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Just think if you're bringing an employee onto UCA, you're going to need to come through people admin. If they're already here, most of the time you're going to use a PAF. The only time that you don't do that is if you have posted a job that you're end up hiring somebody on campus, then you would finish them out on people admin.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And always, Tyra said it too, if you're not sure if they need to be people admin or PAF, we know these last 2 years have been crazy and departments have had to restructure, reorg. I know here in HR, we've done that. We're all doing things that we may not have been doing before. And it all kind of happens so quickly for everybody. We know there might be pieces that you're missing, or you've not ever had. Some of you do PAFs maybe once a year. You don't do them as often as other people, so it's still kind of foreign. Same way with postings and hiring proposals. It never bothers us for you to call and ask. We would rather you do that than you start it in an incorrect way and then and then you're on a time crunch, and then we got to make you go the other way, we would want to save you that trouble. So it never bothers us for you to just kind of clarify with us, because once you do that, you'll get the hang of it. So don't be afraid to call us. We're glad to help in any way. We try not to create processes for process sake. We try to make them as easy for you to get everything that we need to help you out. So that's what we're here for.
So I do want to respond to a couple more questions that we've had so far before I take the screen back away from y'all and finish out what I had planned. One question was around hiring GTAs for a semester only and what dates they would use for fall and spring. It's the same dates that I shared related to GAAs, where it's either that like August 1st or 16th start date through December 15th. And some of that will be related to like what they're doing in the summer, as to whether you could start them on the 1st or the 16th. And then another question, I saw one other one, was about tuition on grants, and can you do tuition if you're paying through a grant? Well, if that's a part of your proposal and your planned budget, absolutely that can be a part of the proposal. And so it would be, but it depends on your proposal and what was approved by the funder.
One note I do want to say in terms of dates that you mentioned, just like with your GAAs, you have to do two separate if we're doing, one for the fall and one for the spring. When it comes to summer PAFs for GAs, if it crosses the fiscal year, that July 1, say they work in June and July, it's one assignment, but it crosses the fiscal year, you do need to do two PAFs that accommodate the June to July time. And that, well, actually, no, you don't have to do two PAFs. You can put those on the same PAF, but you will need to break it out on the different lines to make sure it gets paid in the right fiscal year. And the reason for that is the way Banner is really the reason we do a lot of things. I think everybody feels that on campus everywhere around. Banner kind of rules the world around here. The way salaries roll over at fiscal year require us to, that's what requires us to have a separate PAF when it crosses fiscal year. Not because we like for you to have to do extra paperwork, because we have to enter them all. So it's just as much for us as it is for you, but it's the way Banner works and rolls the budget over and the salaries over, and the way legislative audit likes an audit trail and everything. So that's why that is required. I know it always helps me to know why something's happening and not just that we're like, you have to do it. I promise there's always a reason that we try to talk the powers that be out of. And if we send them down to you, it's because we have to. But we love you and want to take care of you.
All right. Well, Rachel and Tyra, I'm going to go ahead and take over and finish this up. And I hope y'all will stay on in case there are additional questions when we get to the end. So let me go back to my presentation. And there's not much more. So y'all bear with us just a few more minutes. Okay, so just some notes with regard to some of the things that have been shared. As we've talked about the different figures, these are just reminders. That was based on a full assistantship. So for example, the 8,600 being a minimum is for full assistantship, 20 hours a week. If you're doing a half assistantship, you just prorate that. If you're trying to do other percentages, please have a talk with me because we really should be sticking to either full assistantships, half assistantships, but I recognize that sometimes in other instances, things get a little wonky. So we just need to have a conversation. A reminder, and I don't know that I've said this in this particular information session before, but some issues have come up. So I do want to say it and say it loud, is that if you are hiring someone with a full assistantship, so 20 hours a week, then that means that they have to be enrolled in 9 hours each semester of that assistantship. Not all of our programs can support a 9-hour course load each semester. So, we need to have a conversation if that's what you're trying to do, because what we don't want is we have a student who shows up, they're on a full assistantship, they think everything's grand, and then they get here and find out, oh, wait, I'm not eligible because my program can't provide the 9 hours. And we do not want them taking extra hours that don't count on their program. So just be aware that not every program can support full-time study. And when that happens, then those students are not going to be eligible for a full assistantship. Now, that same course requirement is not there if they're on a less than full assistantship. But if they're full assistantship, then they have to be registering for at least 9 hours each semester. And another note, just a reminder, is that if you're giving a tuition scholarship, and about only 20% of our graduate assistantships right now have a tuition scholarship associated with it. But if you're doing that, then the amount of tuition is not a portion of the minimum stipend. So in other words, you couldn't say, well, their stipend's 5,000, but I'm giving them 3,600 in tuition. So that totals up to 8,600. That's not how that works. The stipend has to be the 8,600. And then the tuition would be considered on top of that. So just to be mindful of that as well. And then just a reminder, and this has been said a couple of times around termination PAFs. If your student is graduating, they don't automatically get terminated. So you have to complete a termination PAF, or if your student, if they're leaving and they're not coming back, that's okay. You have to do those termination PAFs. So just be aware of that as well. All right, down to just 2 odds and ends. First odds and end. Like if I had a set of drums right now, I'd play a drum roll for y'all because I'm super excited to announce that we have a resource guide for hiring graduate assistants. Wait, I heard it. There are applause all over campus right now. We are super excited about this. Leslie put this together the last few months. And so once we get out of this meeting today, she'll send it out via email to all the folks that are here. We want to distribute it and make it widely available. It should answer all your questions that you have. The information that's been shared today is in there. If you open it up and you're looking for something and you can't find it, let us know so that we can add to it. So we'll continue to make it better and stronger and update it as things change. But we're so excited to offer you a resource guide. This should help when we have new people coming in. As admins and so forth, as new graduate program coordinators join us and everything. But anyway, resource guide, look for it in your email inbox and be excited. And then the second thing I do want to say is that Graduate Student Appreciation Week is coming up quickly. It's next week. It's always the first full week of April, which this year is April 4th through 8th. So this is a nationally celebrated week. If you are working with graduate students, please make a point to tell them that you appreciate them, not just graduate assistants, all graduate students. We do have some things planned. So if you follow us on social media, you'll see announcements related to that. There's a TikTok challenge. I'm not a TikToker yet, but I may be by the end of the week so that I'm participating in the challenge. I hope you will too. We'll have daily giveaways, and we're trying to recognize different groups of graduate students. So we'll talk about maybe one day highlight online students, part-time students, GAs, non-degree seeking students. We have a large growing population of non-degree seeking students. So just be on the lookout for that. And then as always, I do like to plug my podcast, Grad Chats with Dr. B. We haven't had very many episodes this semester, but we're about to have some that go out. And I recorded a couple in the last few weeks that are really, really good. So if you don't follow us on social media, at least try to subscribe to the podcast and encourage your graduate students to do so, because the information coming out is aimed at supporting them and their success in graduate school. So with that, I'm going to take another look at our chat and see if we have some questions. Tyra says, way to go, Leslie and Dr. Barlow. So Tyra is all about that resource guide. So that's exciting. And let's see what's in the Q&A. So full GAs can be offered to graduate certificate students as long as they are enrolled in 9 hours per semester. Okay, that's a question. Well, I'm not really, so Cole asked that question. Cole, I'm really struggling with that because those certificates are not long enough for a student to really engage in the assistantship very long, but we just need to have a conversation about that. And different certificates are different lengths of, they have different requirements in terms of the number of hours. And so I think we just have to have a conversation and see what we can work out in that regard. Here's one question I missed. I believe student workers can work in the summer without being enrolled in summer classes. Does the same apply to graduate assistantships? No, it does not apply to graduate assistantships. So if they're on an assistantship in the summer, they have to enroll in at least 1 hour. So it's not the 9 hours, but they do have to enroll in at least 1 hour. Another question is about a full assistantship and requiring the 9 hours. Does that apply in their last semester? So if they get down to their last semester and they only need 1 or 2 hours to finish out the program, do they have to enroll in 9 hours? No, they do not. And that is stressed a little bit more thoroughly in our graduate assistant handbook, and I'm sure it's in the resource guide as well. But yeah, no, we never want to position our students when in a way so that they're taking extra classes. Just go take some classes so that you've got your 9 hours for your assistantship. We don't want to do that. So in that last semester, if they have 1 hour, 3 hours, 6 hours, whatever it is, then we would not require the 9 hours because we don't want them taking extra classes. Another question we have is being notified about funding. So Leslie has got that on her things to take care of immediately after this session list to do list. And so it should be within the next week. So you'll have that. All right. Well, if additional questions come up, you know who we are, you know where we are, right? We've got Tyra and Rachel in HR who are very willing to help. We've got Leslie here in the graduate school who is always willing to help and figure things out for you. And, you know, I'm here to, I don't know what I do. I sign paperwork digitally now, so that's super exciting. But thank you all for your time today. I hope this was helpful. And as questions come up, let us know, and be on the lookout for a PowerPoint, a resource guide, and a YouTube channel recording of this session today. Rachel and Tyra, thank y'all for joining us today as well.
Thank you.